Today we're making a variety of cheeses, and this is actually video one of what is going to be kind of a series, or it's leading up to a project that I've been wanting to do for a couple of months. So I'm going to talk about the project in the blog post, so be sure and follow the link in the description box. I'll try to remember to put a pinned post on the comment section too, but I have more of a long-termish project that we are going to do over the next several weeks. I'm not sure how long it's going to take because I'm not sure how involved this is going to be in the end. This is just week one of it. So stay tuned, see how to make these cheeses, check the blog post and see what our end goal is, and let's get started making cheese. All right, we are going to start out with I don't know if we'll call it a white cheddar, a jack, something like a white cheese. So what I have here is I've pre-mixed a base color, and we're going to use this in, I think, in maybe all of our cheeses today. And this is 1 part white to 3 parts translucent clay. I'm not sure which white. I think my translucent is Sculpey. I don't know for sure which white I have. Whatever I had. We have this amount of that, and we have this little tiny bit of yellow ochre. And I'm going to mix these together. Yellow ochre is a weird color. It's one I use a lot. And if you've watched my channel for any length of time, watched any of my food making videos, yellow ochre is used to warm up and tone down a lot of clay mixtures. This is going to warm this up a bit, make it look not quite so stark colored, but it's such a small amount. So I'm going to turn the camera off and get this worked in until I no longer have streaks and I just have a very pale, creamy color. When that is accomplished, I'll come back and we will start making our first block of cheese. All right, I did end up adding a little more white of the translucent white mixture because it was just a little too dark. Play with it until you get a nice creamy color. It's almost the color actually of the masking tape that I use on my tray to tell me where my borders are. Of where my work area is. So now I'm going to roll this out. I want it about 1/8 of an inch thick. First off, I need to cornstarch my work surface though. So I have some cornstarch. I have a little powder brush here. It's actually a makeup brush. As you know, I use a lot of makeup brushes in working with clay because they're perfect for using with powders. All right, so this is what I have here are some craft sticks that I glued together, a set of 2 craft sticks on each side. I made a pair of these. They will help me to roll things out, and they're pretty close to 1/8 of an inch thick. I do have a little piece of yellow ochre. I think I picked it up off my tray. My yellow ochre that I'm using was very crumbly, and I had a little trouble getting it mixed up and conditioned this morning. So now we're going to cut a nice straight line. And then off to the side of my tray here, I have a piece of cardstock that's 1/8 of an inch thick. If you watch my basket tutorial, you might recognize this. This was one of the strips I used to weave that basket from, or I cut to do that with. Now I'm going to use that because I want to have about 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch block of clay. And this clay we're going to put to the side because we're going to use that again. Now this I am going to put in the freezer. So I'm going to set it off to the side to do that because now we're going to take just a little bit of this and I'm going to take just the tiniest crumb of orange and an equally tiny crumb of a random yellow that I had in my clay stash. I'm using up some of my odds and ends of clay lately, so I don't always know exactly what color they are. So start with a very small amount. We can always add more. but I don't want to make this grow into enough cheese to feed the entire, you know, mini universe. So I'm going to want, let's get this worked through. Let's add a little more orange. And we might add a little more yellow too. That's a really pale yellow. I suspect it's a lemon yellow, but I'm not positive. So I'm going to play with adding more yellows and more orange until I get this to the color I want it, and then I'll be back. All right, I ended up adding quite a bit more orange, but I finally got it. It actually matches a little piece of shredded cheddar cheese in my refrigerator. Don't have a lot of cheese right now since I'm snowed in currently. All right. Once again, I rolled it out, and I'm going to cut this one the same size as the other one. In fact, I think I'll cut 2 of these since it's quite a bit shorter. It's actually a little bit more of a shape that's going to be easier to work with than that last one. So I am going to cut these. I'm going to put both pieces all the clay I've cut into long strips into the freezer for about probably 5 or 10 minutes. And when it's nice and firmed up, I'll come back and we will cut some slices. All right, this has been in the freezer for about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 minutes, something like that. So it's nice and firm. And I'm working on a piece of parchment paper. That way I don't have to move this and take a chance on distorting the shape after I get it cut. So I'm going to cut a nice straight line. Then I'm going to cut some very thin slices. So I'm going to attempt to do this without getting my head in front of it, in front of the camera. Oops, that's getting way too thin. I'm having trouble seeing what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to put these off to the side on my parchment, but where they won't be right where I'm trying to work, and separated. Now we will probably glue these or fasten these together later for our display. But I want to get quite a few slices. That's probably enough on camera. You get the idea. Then I'm going to cut a couple of pieces of this so that I can display some full blocks of cheese. Then I've got my yellow, and it's already softening. And I'm going to do the very same thing. I'm going to cut a straight end. And I'm going to cut slices and then some blocks. So I'm going to finish up doing that with the pieces that I've made. I'm going to put those on my paper plate, and then we'll get ready for the next cheese. All right, now we're going to do one of those lovely little balls of cheese that has the red waxy coating. For this, we're going to use what's left of our white cheddar or white cheese mix that we just used, and then fairly equal parts of Fimo red and Fimo carmine red. I'm going to mix these two together to make, one is kind of a cool red, one is kind of a warm red. Together they make a good color for this, and I think since these are both Fimo Classic, I am going to turn the camera off to give myself time to get this mixed together, because this is going to take me a while. So when I have these two combined, I'll be right back. All right, I've got these mixed pretty well, and I've got this piece of clay rolled into kind of a short stubby cylinder. And I've got a wet piece of wet towel here to wipe my fingers off on. One advantage that I love about working with the Fimo, it doesn't get all over my hands quite as much as Sculpey does. Sorry, I've been coughing this morning. My nose is running. I think it's the change in the weather. All right, now hopefully I cut that long enough. We are going to roll this around. Perfect. Cut it where it joins so that we have nice. Let's see if I can cut that off. All right. I'm going to roll this until I get about a 1/2 inch cylinder, 1/2 inch snake. Just a little more. And then I'm going to pull, I'm going to cut it first, get a nice cut that has a nice flat edge. And we are going to pull the ends. And the idea is we need to close this off with the red on the outside. And you might have to pull off a little bit of the white. I don't like how I've got white showing there, so I'm going to cut that off. And add just a tiny bit of red clay over it. It'll be okay because we'll make sure that we don't show this part when we cut. Well, I'll continue to work on that off camera, but first let's get this cut to approximately a 1/2 inch long, which it is pretty much. I mean, it is pretty close to the size I want it. Now I'm going to bring this up. And if you need to, we can take a very thin bit of red clay and kind of patch that with. I'm going to turn the camera off. I'm going to work with this and get this all coated in the red and make sure it looks seamless. And when that's done, I'll be back. All right, I got that all pulled together, and then I dip my finger into my cornstarch, and I use my fingertip with the cornstarch on it to really get this nice and smooth. And I am going to stick this in the freezer now for probably about 10 minutes. I want to get it pretty firm so that I can cut it without squishing it. So I'll be right back. All right, I have zoomed you in a bit here now that I've taken this out of the freezer. It was in the freezer for 10 minutes. I'm going to try to not forget that I have zoomed you in so that I not move out from under the camera. So now this is nice and firm, but still cuttable. And I'll be able to cut about that much. And then I'm going to attempt to cut this in half. Now, depending on how you want to serve your cheese, you may want to cut it differently. I think that will be fine for what I'm going to do. So now this can go on my baking tray along with my other cheeses and be ready to bake. So let's move on to our next type of cheese. All right, now we're going to make a new color clay to make some more cheese. Now this color this is our 1 part white to 3 parts translucent. This is Fimo Champagne, and this is that same yellow I've been using. You can see I'm using a lot more of this, a little bit of that, and just a tiny bit of that one. And I am going to get these all mixed together again. And since that one of them is going to be a little harder to mix together, I will turn the camera off so you don't have to watch me struggle with mixing these together. Once they are combined thoroughly, I will be back and we will go to the next step. All right, I've got this all mixed together. It's a nice buttery color. That's how I would describe that. Now I'm going to cut off a chunk of it. And a little more than that. I'm going to make a ball. And that's too much. I've made this before, but it's been a very long time since I made it. And I'm flattening it out with my finger. What I want to make is a kind of bulging disc. Now, I have sandpaper. And we are going to, it's okay if this picks up a little bit of color because we're actually going to paint it when we get done, when it gets all baked. Right now I'm trying to get texture. It works better if you have a coarser sandpaper. This, I couldn't find my coarser sandpaper today. So once that is nicely textured, we've got it nice and even, we are going to cut out a couple of wedges. And it's okay if this flattens just a little bit because that's kind of the idea. Now, these are going to move to our baking tray, our baking plate. Now, let's go on to our next one. All right, this is one I've never done before, but I've read a couple of different sets of directions and I'm gonna wing it. So I have what's left of that clay from the brie. I have a little bit of, I wanted leaf green. I don't know if this is leaf green because it didn't have a label, and blue. And the first thing I'm going to do is roll these into very, very thin snakes. These feel like they're both female, possibly female classic. I'm not sure. I think I've got more green than I had blue, and I want about equal amounts. And there's lots of different varieties of blue cheeses, so I'm not exactly sure which one this is, if it's really, really very realistic. And I'm kind of winging it. I don't put that that way. I want it all going the same way. That's fine. Now the idea is not to let that blue and green mixture mix in but to keep it in streaks throughout our cheese. I'm not a huge fan of blue cheese, so I'm not sure about this one, but we're going to give it a shot. And most of the things I saw said to texture the outside. So if you guys eat blue cheese, let me know. Does this look like anything you've ever seen? This one I'm going to cut into more wedges because I think this one I just want to put a wedge out. I don't want to put the whole wheel. All right, well now I'm going to add these pieces to our plate of cheese. Let me get these moved on, then I'll move this back under camera. See, that one didn't work. All right, it looks like we're opening up a miniature cheese shop here. Can I get all this? Let me back the camera up so you can see everything. So we have our cheddar cut in little squares. We have our, God, this one looks huge now. Well, those are little pieces, so it's kind of the idea. That's kind of what I wanted. We have our brie. We have our blue cheese. So I'm going to bake all of this at 250. My oven's been doing a little bit of a creeping up from the temperature I set it at, so I'm baking my clay right now at 250 and instead of 275 because it's kind of going back and forth between the two. So 250 for probably about 10 minutes. Since this one is a little bit thicker, it won't hurt anybody to bake that long. When they're baked and cooled, I'll come back and we will look at what we've got. All right, I've got the wheel of brie and the two little slices, and I've got some white craft paint and a small brush. And we are going to paint just the outside rind of this, being careful not to get the paint onto the cut edges of your cheese. I probably won't even bother to do the bottom. Well, yeah, I probably will. I'll come back and do the bottom later because I might display this on its side. So off camera, I'll come back and I'll do the bottom edges, but right now we'll just do these. And then when this paint dries, I'm going to touch up a couple of areas with, add a little gloss with some Mod Podge. So I'll come back when I'm ready to do that. All right, these now have paint all the way around for the, and that's just the, like the rind that forms on the brie. Now we are going to, this is the only one we're going to do it to, because brie tends to be, it's a very soft cheese, it tends to be a little bit on the glossier side than a lot of cheeses. So what I like to do is just take some matte Mod Podge, avoiding that white paint that we just put on. And just put the smallest amount of this on just the cheese part, not on the rind. Now, if you want to make this look like a nice gooey like a baked brie or a really soft gooey one. Take a little bit of that mixture that we used for the cheese, mix it with some TLS, and kind of put it there in that opening. I'm not going to do that today. So that's all we're going to do with this. This needs to dry and dry completely, and then we'll talk about the cheeses we made. All right, here is all our varieties of cheese we made. I think if I was doing this again, I would make the wax wrapped one smaller. That's my only one I don't like. I made it way bigger than I wanted. But I'll probably cut one of these wedges to use for our project. These little slices, I didn't mention earlier, I don't think. These are supposed to be the kind that you buy that are cut kind of the size to go on a cracker. We've got our blue, we've got our brie. I love how these came out, and I can't wait to move forward with this project and get it done so that we can put all our display together. So be sure and check the blog post for more information about both today's project and the long-term project this is part of. Thank you for watching the video. If you like the video, push the like button. Leave me a comment. If you like my content and haven't subscribed, hit the subscription button and the notification bell so you know when I put out a new video, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.